Hello guys, my name is Pios and today we're going to see how the services lifetime of the Blazor server application can be different from other ASP.NET Web application and from what we are used to. And actually it's the scope lifetime that behaves in a different way that we are used to. Let's go to our project. I have a Blazor server project and the page that we are interested in, it's the people page. We actually display in a table some people. Let's go see for a second the person model. It just has an ID and a full name. Okay, and now let's go to the back of our people page. As you can see, we inject the people service and we call that on initialized async method of our page. And then we get people, we call the get people async method and we pass a cancellation token. And then in the dispose async method of our page, we actually dispose the cancellation token source and we also dispose the people service. Now, why do we dispose the people service? If we go to the people service, as you can see, I do not inject a DB context, but a DB context factory. Now I have another video dedicated on that and why you should not inject the DB context itself in a Blazor application, but now let's continue with that approach. So I have an iapp DB context, which is an abstraction of our app DB context, and I create an instance of that app DB context from the context factory, and that's why I need to dispose that people service class, because when we create an instance of an app DB context from the context factory, that instance is not managed from the application server provider, and so we need to dispose it ourselves. And now in our program.cs file, I configure the DB context factory and I also register my people service as scoped. Now let's debug this and see how that application works. Okay, we go to our people page. We take back some data that are on the database. I go back to the home page and then I navigate again to the people page. And oops, I got an exception. Let's see what exception it is. And it says system object disposed exception cannot access a disposed context instance. Now why is that happening? Let's go to our people service, put a breakpoint in the constructor and one in the get people async method, and let's stop the application and rerun it. Now if I go to my people page, we hit that first breakpoint. So we got through the constructor. I'll hit continue, we go to our get people async method, continue, and hopefully we get back the data, and that's what happened. Now I go back to the home page and then I go back to our people page. Now as you can see, we didn't hit the breakpoint in the constructor, we hit directly the get people async with the breakpoint in the get people async method. And because we had already disposed that context the previous time we leave from that page, now we do not have that context, and that's why we will get that exception, as you can see here again. Now why is that happening? Because in Blazor there is no such thing as per request scope. Well, actually there is, but it's for the whole session. The scope is the singular connection that starts when we first visit the site and it ends when we're leaving it. Although we see that URL changes, we don't actually navigate to another page in the way that we're used to in other ASP.NET application, because that's a single page application. The app actually renders the content of the different components that our new page is built with. So every time we navigate to a different page, we get the same instance of that service that we have registered as scoped. So it is actually scoped, but in the context of an SPA. But it actually behaves more than a singleton. Now, just to be clear, if I go to that web page and I take an instance of a service and another person goes to the same web page, they will not share the same instance with me. So it's not actually a singleton, but we can think of it as a singleton per user. So for that to work, all we need to do in our example is to register the people service as transient. So let's go and do that. Okay, now here when I register my DB context factory, it actually registers that as scoped if we don't set otherwise, the same way that the add DB context extension method of the iService collection works. But we don't care here because we might have the same instance of that appdb context for our whole journey into that application. But since every time we need that people service and now it's registered as transient, we will hit that constructor, so that context factory, although it will be the same, it will create each time a new DB context, and then we will dispose that. So if we go again and debug this, now that we have the people service registered as transient, and we'll hit a breakpoint, one in the constructor and the one in the get people async method. Actually, let's remove that. We only need the one in the constructor, so we go to people, we hit that breakpoint, then we go back to home, then again to people, and then we hit again that breakpoint, so we will get a new instance of that app DB context. And let's put one in the dispose async, so we'll hit continue, and now if we move from that people page, we will hit that dispose async method, so we will dispose our context. Now as far for the other services, the transient is the transient we are used to, and the singleton is the singleton that we are used to. But that difference in the scope lifetime, it's why it's very important not to inject anywhere the app DB context itself, but instead use a DB context factory. And again, I have another video talking about that in depth. Thank you for watching and have a nice one.